Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
The aim of the game is very simple at this juncture of the season. 9 championship points are all the margin that is left for Jordan Gronkowski with his non-show last time out. He's back here today, but we head to a place where championships have been decided before, back in 1997. This is the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto here in Andalusia in Spain. It is a case of a top 5 finish for Jacob Reed today, and he will wrap up the SimSpeed title with 4 races in the back pocket to spare, which would be his second world title here with us at SimSpeed TV on iRacing. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone watching around the world. My name's Jake Sperry. Caitlin Penny is along with me for the ride today. And Caitlin, it's a technical challenge that they've got today in Jerez. It's a circuit that is more known now in the world of motorsport for the motorcycle racing that goes along. MotoGP here all the time and use this as a fantastic circuit. But as we zoom on down towards the very, very bottom of Spain, around Seville, Malaga, and of course the Rock of Gibraltar, which is there, Jerez is one of those circuits that you look at and you just get a little bit of a smile that goes from ear to ear.
Yeah, absolutely. It is mainly known for motorcycle racing, as you said. It's named after the great Angel Nieto. And as you can see, we've got other clues as to what goes on here with names like Lorenzo, of course the curver Jorge Lorenzo, but also it has heritage in car racing as well. You've got the chicane Ayrton Senna, you've got Ferrari there, turn 14. I didn't know it was called Ferrari, but that's fantastic stuff as well. And you can see the layout of the course on your screen. It's tight, it's technical, there's only really one long straight, although the run down to turn 1 should also be an overtaking opportunity.
Yeah, there are chances there. We'll expect the run over the top of Cito Ponds and down the hill to Drysack to be the main place to see moves happen. Of course, Expo 92 is going to be a corner to keep in mind. Of course, back when the circuit held the World Expo in 1992. And the corner, of course, has forever remained that way. But a track here which runs clockwise, which is all about tyres here today. It is very, very heavy on the tyres, so keep an eye out on that as they go through. Now let's talk here our race length. 70 laps here, so that'll be about 309 kilometers or 192 miles. They've got to use 2 different types of compound here, Caitlin, and of course the drag reduction system is available from lap 3. That's going to be the key to them getting the passes they want.
Yeah, there are 2 DRS zones here. You've got turn 15 down to turn 1, so that's all of the front straight. I should say up to turn 1, to be honest, because it is quite steeply uphill by the time you get to that point. And then also between turns 5 and 6, which is the long back straight. You can see the predicted tyre life on your screen there. 30 laps for the soft, 40 for the mediums, and 50 for the hard. That's easy to remember. Often you do see drivers trying to push it a little bit longer, just because obviously the way that you get a strategic advantage is by doing better on your set of tyres than your opponents can, running it longer, running it faster, and as a result you may see drivers getting a little bit close to that cliff and really pushing their luck. And there is the Drivers' Championship showing the dominance that Jacob Reed has had as of late.
Yeah, the non-showing from Jordan Gronkowski last time out means that he drops back to 5th position in the championship, but with iRacing system of 4 drop rounds, there are chances for him to leapfrog back up the order, 500 points almost there, the gap, so 412 over Eduardo Radice. Jacob Reed has been simply fantastic, winning this split, the strength of field, and that's why he's been on the top. In your SimSpeed Championships after 19 rounds, 390 for Jacob Reed. He needs just 9 more. 399 is the pass mark for Jordan Gronkowski. Nobody will be able to catch him up after that. Eduardo Radice still keeping Voltalux at bay for 3rd in the championship, with Florian Kammeyer now looking quite comfy in 5th. Anthony Catt jumping up to 7th, with the likes of Nick Burke, Connor Pula and Paul O'Regan now inside the top 10 on 51 championship points in his back pocket. So that's what they've got to deal with. Qualifying has just wrapped itself up, so we're going to be heading over to the starting grid, and what a close front row. 5 thousandths of a second as Emil Lundell takes the pole ahead of the first start of the season for Lenny Papinta. We haven't seen him since Kota last year, where he won the race outright. Jacob Reed, 600ths back, starts in 3rd with Eduardo Radice a full second adrift there. He will go from 4th place. It's then George van Rensburg who will start himself in 6th position, not forgetting Voltalux, who is there in 5th. Another great qualifying from him, with Edward Apari in 7th position, alongside Jordan Gronkowski, who's got work to do today from 8th place. Paul O'Regan starts 9th, along with Florian Kammeyer, who won the last time we were at the Spanish circuit in Aragon. He goes from 10th. Row 6 will house Victor Alad, and the streak broken last time out by Jason Green, who wasn't with us. So a shame to see a near 2-year streak broken for him with consecutive entries, but he'll have to go from 12th position. You then got Thomas Veek, who's there in 13th, along with Kent Nielsen in 14th position, who's remembered to sign up for this race this time, where he didn't last time out. You've then got Michel Rudeau and Reynaldo Augusto back there on row 8 of the grid, a little bit out of order for him. The last row has Anthony Catt way off the pace with his qualifying effort. He'll have work to do, and he's starting on the hard compound tyres only drive to do so. Alan Breteau is the final driver then in the field, who did not set a time. Track conditions then, 28 degrees, and it's a little bit blustery then from the north, so keep that in mind as they all get themselves set up and ready. But lights on then soon here at the Circuito de Jerez. Angel Nieto, lights are out, and we are racing, and it's a great start by Jacob Reed from the 2nd row. He's trying to thread the needle with Lenny Papinta, who now has to leave the room. Lundell will get the whole shot then through at Expo 92, the perfect start that he wanted to his race. And as they run up through Michelin corner turn 2, it looks clean through the front of the field. Everybody's got away and off to a start, and now they'll charge their way up to Cito Pons at turn 5.
Yeah, great start, very, very clean. You can see side by side there, we've got Eduardo Radice, and is that Lux? Oh, and look, there's a little look there from 6th position. George van Rensburg getting involved with Lux and Radice, but Lundell it is who leads after a great start, and and still side by side are Radice and Lux. But I'm just going to say, if you do see the two leaders together, because they're very similarly liveried, the way that you can tell them apart is because of the little red splatter on the back of Lundell's car. You can see it on the airbox there, whereas Reed just has the standard silver slope.
Yeah, a good start though, as they now run through the Ayrton Senna chicane. They run this, which is the road version of this circuit. The motorcycle version of the circuit takes that big long run, and of course this circuit very much in tune with making sure that car speeds slow down through that section of road. Jordan Gronkowski with it all to do. He is in must-win territory, and he's lost a place off the start of this race, so he will now know that he's got to really work to get himself back through. Just looking at the biggest gainer, Florian Kammeyer, 3 places off the start.
Yeah, great start from Florian Kammeyer, the winner at Aragon last time we raced in Spain. And we're back here, of course, at the Circuito Jerez. And we're on to the 2nd lap of the race now. Lundell still leads, and he's already broken a second away from Jacob Reed. So he's looking dangerous to break that DRS before it's even come into play. Lenny Papinta in 3rd place, and it's those 3 who will surely fight for the win today if the performance in qualifying is anything to go by. With that being said though, Radice, Lux, van Rensburg keeping them close, keeping them honest, and still the whole field very, very tightly packed on just the second lap of the race.
This is a high downforce circuit, if ever there was one. The likes then going through Palucci corner and back along. You've got a lot of those corners which are in the medium to high speeds, where you've got those long parabolic style corners which can make a lot as they go through. So that could certainly be a case. But we'll take a look on the start then. This is Florian Kammer's launch to see how just he got away in the early goings. He waits for the lights. He gets a fantastic launch, almost a perfect launch. Gronk really bogged down in front of him, so he had to scramble to the middle, and look at the space that just enveloped in front of him. He just could attack into it and find his way through. Emil Lundell with the fastest lap of the race, a 1:19.0, and that just shows you how switched on you need to be, because it's a very narrow front straight, Caitlin.
Already breaking away then is Emil Lundell, and indeed the front straight here quite narrow, but still very much an overtaking opportunity. We're on board with Lenny Papinta, that's difficult to say quickly. Apparently Lenny Papinta 2, I'm not sure how many Papintas there are in the world, but there you go. And into the hairpin at the end of the straight. Another overtaking opportunity, made famous of course with that collision, that famous 1997 collision between Jacques Villeneuve and Michael Schumacher, which saw the championship decided in the favour of the Quebecian. But today we will see a different championship being contested. Jacob Reed in championship winning contention in the early stages, as I see Victor Auard now dropping down the order, and he is behind the wall, I think, so we've had our first casualty.
Yeah, no, that's coming through Nieto corner itself, and he's just had a snap of oversteer through the middle of the corner. Has completely clobbered the left rear of the car, and as such, Victor Auard then departs after just 3 laps. Papinta with the fastest lap then of the race now then on an 18.9 is going to look to try and really put it through. We'll take a look heading through Aspar corner, and then that transfer that goes through into the right. He's wide in on entry, and look at that, he just catches a little bit of a tank slapper, and at that point he's got nowhere to go.
Yep, so unfortunately our first casualty is Victor Auard. 17 cars still in the race though, and there's another one, and that's Kent Nielsen, who, as you said, failed to sign up for the last race simply because he was late, but today seems to be having different issues altogether. We're now on board with George van Rensburg on the back of Walter Lux.
I tell you what, Jason Green did a very good job of staying out of the way of the issue for Kent Nielsen out there on circuit. So we've got to keep an eye on that, hopefully at some point. But George van Rensburg's definitely keeping this one honest. We're going to take a look here at what happens. So Kent Nielsen, I think, just hooks the curb through turn 3, just goes broadside through, and you can see Jason Green has to abandon ship, and to the inside would have been Renato Augusto having to try and avoid it too. So just about enough being able to avoid at this stage, but at least for the moment, your front 4 clear of Walter Lux at this moment, has broken the 1 second gap that's needed. Jacob Reed trying to lure in car number 13, Emil Lundell, as now Eduardo Radiz puts the fastest lap of the race on the board. An 18.9 gets situated in the back pocket.
Radiz doing well to keep up with them in these early stages. He was a second back in qualifying, and you'd expect that would mean that he'd be dropping back in the early stages, but he's sticking with the top 3 who looked to be the 3 real contenders here today. Jake, you were saying before the start that there were 5 people, if not more, that you would consider contenders today. Lundell, Reed, and just a little bit of a lag spike there. I was hoping that wasn't a disconnection, and Lundell still seems to be there. But these guys are definitely all competitors, as there we see a move for Ronaldo Augusto going up to 12.
Yeah, through on Jason Green at Drysap corner, using the DRS from a little ways back. Down the hill means that it's slightly less effective here, DRS, but when it flattens out, he gets right up alongside, dives it through on that inside line, and pretty much has the corner sorted. Jason Green leaves a lot of room. A very gentlemanly driver is Green out there, who makes most of his strength of field pushes in terms of his iRacing through the Spec Racer Ford, which are out there. 0.4 of a second at Expo 92 for Jacob Reed, and he realises he's got a long time here in this one. We're expecting a one-stop strategy here today of mediums to softs. We're expecting them to go 40 laps here on the medium tyres at the bare minimum to go and attack the final stint of the race, and it looks like everybody's pretty much got the same sort of strategy in mind. So when you look at that here from Jacob Reed's perspective, he's thinking, how can I unlock the pass here on Emil Lundell? Closing, but not quite close enough here to Emil Lundell, who proved in the last race at Circuit of the Americas that he was the nearest challenger to Jacob Reed at this moment in time in terms of his race pace.
Yeah, there was a change in the order there. Was that Florian Kammer having a little scrap with Edward Apariari? But we're going to see a replay. It was actually George van Rensburg going for a move on Walter Lux. Goes up the inside into the hairpin and makes the move stick, but Lux has the inside line now and still makes the move stick. So well done there from George van Rensburg, the South African, making it work. You can see on your screen there the tyre compounds that everyone started on. The only driver with an alternate compound at the start was Anthony Catt, who was starting near the back anyway, so has gone for the hard tyres. As a little wide there goes Van Rensburg, and Catt will run much longer into the race.
Yeah, and it's on camber, that final corner, of course, of Jorge Lorenzo, famous for the incident that happened between Valentino Rossi and Sete Gibernau back in 2004. So that is a section of circuit where you can be aggressive into the corner. You can run deep because you'll get all of the banking help off of the exit to attack, and that's what George van Rensburg was certainly looking at this early phase of the race. They've already dropped to the tune of 3.5 seconds here to Eduardo Radiz, and they need to break away quickly. Big case of trying to shake the toe then from George van Rensburg. He's desperate to try and get away and up the field. George has really come on in leaps and bounds in terms of his pace, and it certainly seems to be suiting him here today.
It does indeed. Van Rensburg up into 5th. He is one of the most improved drivers of the series from what I've seen. So you're absolutely right that he's coming on leaps and bounds, and he's currently pulling away actually from this little scrap here between Lux and Kammer. Lux, of course, a driver who is often there or thereabouts, but rarely challenges for the wins. And you mentioned Lundell leading today. I think he's got a real point to prove after the last race, where he very easily could have won the race if he hadn't made that mistake in the pit stop where he overshot his box and had to reverse back in, costing him crucial time.
Official fastest lap of the race then for Lenny Papinta, who gets there with a 1:18.8. The fastest lap of the race in total is Jacob Reed's. It was a 1:18.7 from him, but he had an off-track incident on that lap, so it will not count towards the official fastest lap of the race. And he thinks about a look to the inside at dry sack and doesn't quite get it, sometimes known as the Danny Pedrosa corner, but he can't quite find the angle of what he wants. So Jacob Reed is forced to watch once again the back of Emil Lundell, who is certainly proving that he has got world caliber skills at this moment, running about through now Palucci corner, this fast right-hander, off of the exit then up to 230 kilometers an hour before diving on the brakes for the Ayrton Senna chicane, and then what was normally a fast-flowing section is now a speed-up section heading towards the final corner. And I tell you what, if they did run that motorcycle layout instead, they'd really have an opportunity to make Lorenzo an overtaking corner. It really does struggle because of the chicane in front of it.
Yeah, of course, the idea is to slow the cars down so it's less dangerous. In sim racing, you don't really have to worry about that, but this is the single-seater layout. The first stage of this race has really flown past so far. We're already on lap 9 out of 70, so nearly a 1/7 of the way through the race already. And as you saw on the screen earlier on, the medium tyres can feasibly go about 40 laps in, and there's a spin, and that's Thomas Wieck. So Wieck going for a spin and rejoining, and once again Jason Green, one of the first people on the scene, has to keep his wits about him to not get involved. And here's a replay, and it's exactly the same mistake that Kent Nielsen made earlier on as he gets over the curb and spins it around.
Yeah, he did very well to get it out of the way, and very much needed a bit of help from the cars around to not collect them at that moment in time. So very much a good sense there from Thomas Wieck, but back to the the three up front, because they are dropping Eduardo Radice here ever so slowly with the pace that they're running. Lundell, Reed and Papinta, who are all there, the Swede, the Worcesterman and the Frenchman, who are all there and pushing, and this could be where Jacob Reed thinks about it. Again, he gets close but backs out, heading into the opening corner at the start of lap 10 here of 70 at Jerez. So there is certainly a sense of they can go through, and those spikes aren't going to be helping Jacob Reed very much. They can be very distracting through the corners, especially 3 and 4, which you need to set up here for the plateaued corner of Sito Ponds.
That's true, it's Lundell who's glitching about a bit, which of course won't help Reed if he sees them in the same way that we do, and also won't help Lundell if he has a disconnection. But look at Reed taking a little look. He knows he's not close enough, despite that being a DRS activation zone. But goodness me, he is still in very close proximity to Emil Lundell. The great thing for us with this particular race, and Lundell with another big lag spike there, the great thing is that if I finish the point that I was making before, these tyres can feasibly do over half race distance, meaning we're only going to get one pit stop today, and the rest of the race will be battling on track.
It's a very interesting pit lane. It's a forward-searching pit lane rather than a rear-searching pit lane. You often see pit lanes go to the outside of the circuit, this one to the inside, so you've got to be very switched on at how tight you need to turn into the corner, and then on the exit of the pitch, you can see where that lines up, right on the exit of Expo 92, so you've got to be pretty switched on when you exit there, and you've got to go all the way to the blue commitment cone to get back out again. Keep an eye on that second group, though, which is forming at the moment with George van Rensburg here, because Florian Kammer is looking a little bit punchy at the moment, is the German. The Austrian in front of him, Walter Lux, is starting to find a bit of second win, and Edward Apariari is very happily holding on to this group. They are dropping Jordan Gronkowski, who I think is going through a little bit of a sore patch of form at the moment, as again Jacob Reed gets close but not close enough to make the move. And I find this quite fascinating here. Jordan Gronkowski, about 5 races ago, was the unequivocal number 2 driver in this field, but he's gone through, I think, a little bit of a humbling process, and the moment that title's gone out the window, so too is the pace.
Yeah, and half a year ago he was leading the championship, so unfortunately for Gronk, I think he's rather lost form recently. It might well be that as Reed picked it up and caught him up in the championship, Gronk just kind of lost motivation potentially. There might also be other factors. I haven't actually spoken to him about what might be going on, but sometimes something new comes up in someone's life and they can't practice quite as much. There could be any number of things keeping Gronkowski from his full potential, but it's clear to see that he's not the same Jordan Gronkowski that we knew back at, say, Long Beach.
I know he loves his dad watching these events out there, so hello Mr. Gronkowski out there, and hope you're having a good time. There is still Florian Kammer, who of course running in the number 9 Club Diach car at this moment. We'll have Christoph Klinkmann in his ears saying you're doing a good job at the moment. It's very difficult to find the overtake over the top of Sito Ponds because you've got the dirty air effect. There goes Jacob Reed straight down the inside. That blink's going to cause him a bit of concern, but he's through on Emil Lundell. Gets the pass done on lap 12, and that will give him a little bit more something to work with out there at the front. He would much happier be dictating tempo right at the front of this field, and now it's time for Emil Lundell to try and become the aggressor.
You can almost set your watch by it, can't you? Jacob Reed taking the lead of a Grand Prix, and we're seeing a replay of how he did it. Lundell not really defending it that much, could have taken more of an inside line, but decides to let Reed go through. That may well be because maybe he just wasn't expecting Reed to be able to pull the move from that far back, and he knew that he was beaten, or maybe he wants Reed to lead for a bit, get all of that heavy air, the air that hasn't been disturbed by a car since the previous lap, and therefore use up a little bit more fuel and have to find his own lines. But whatever the case, Jacob Reed leads for the time being by 0.7 of a second. Lundell will still get that DRS. Papinta will still get the DRS from both of them. We've barely even spoken about Lenny Papinta, but he's been following them around as he's gone. And you can see Eduardo Radice there in the background, pretty much on his own now as the best of the rest.
Yeah, he's there about 2 seconds adrift of Pinter, who is there in 3rd position overall. I would say that's not the worst job in the world for him out there with where he finds himself. So I think he's just waiting for troubles to brew for your front 3, and then he'll try and take advantage and pick up yet another podium. It's been the story really of Eduardo Rodis' season, that when he's got into position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, he's had 10 podiums this season without a race win.
Yeah, so he wants to pick that form up and finally break that duck, but it is always hard, especially when you've got the likes of Jacob Reed in this field. Remember, was it like 8 wins in a row that he got? He's on course for another one here, setting the fastest lap of the race as he crosses the start-finish line. And you get an extra point for that as well, so that would help him not just wrap up the championship today, but rather overkill his way to the championship. But whatever the case, Eduardo Rodis here still waiting for his first victory of the season, which has felt inevitable since the very start.
In the last 11 rounds worth of racing, Jacob Reed's got 10 victories. The only driver who's been able to beat him so far is Florian Kammeyer at Aragon.
Sorry, I saw the order change, but I think it was just a blink from Lundell there. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah. That's absolutely fine. Lundell continues to have his internet issues out there over the course of this race. Just the one retiree so far being Victor Awad, who went out on lap 3 as we focus on the second group at the moment, and Lux falling further into the clutches of Kammeyer, and Edward Apari-Ari there in the number 12, Club UK&I, is just trying to stay there, and that looks like troubles for Anthony Catt, the hard compound tyre runner, spun around at Drysack corner, and there was contact between himself and the recovering Thomas Veek.
Okay, well, we haven't seen much contact in the race yet. The only one was Awad with the barriers, but we're going to see a replay now of what's happened with Jason Green. So that's Week coming through and into the corner, possibly a little bit of netcode there. That looked to be an unfortunate one, but luckily Anthony Catt able to continue on in the race.
Well, netcode or no netcode, I think that was a case of Catt trying to shut the door, and Thomas Veek, I don't think, had himself nearly alongside by the time he got to Drysack. So that's a case of just running into the wrong place at the wrong time. And now there is going to be work to be done in this one. Lundell still shadowing here with Jacob Reed and Lenny Papinter. And I think Lenny's actually playing quite a smart game here, Caitlin. I think Lenny's going to start waiting for the pit stop window, just hold on to the group at this stage and then try and pick up an undercut somewhere.
Yeah, the race for the win doesn't really start until after the pit stop. The real aim right now is to keep up, and of course that's the disadvantage of having a one-stop race. Sometimes it does actually encourage drivers to just sit back and relax until something major happens. But whatever the case, Papinter is playing the hand that he's been dealt and doing it well so far, keeping up with these top two. The real issue with that situation would be if Lundell begins to drop back from Jacob Reed, because then he would drop back too, and that's Alan Breteau going off, and I think he made contact with the wall, just judging by where he's rejoining from.
Well, I think he's got away with the wall, but he's found the gravel over there at Nieto corner. You get a lot of wind transfer through that section. It creates an amphitheatre through there with the natural banking that's there. Back end steps out, goes sliding in through the gravel, lucky not to beach himself, and continues back on then with his race. First time we've seen Alan Breteau this season, and as such, the number 15 driver just about keeping himself out of harm's way. Lundell continuing to chase as we go on board with Lenny Papinter. They're in 3rd position, getting a great view of what makes this circuit so good, rushing around then through Agnieto corner into Palucci, and now looking to make that charge back to home here as you pretty much fold upon yourself around this circuit like a paperclip.
Hasn't been the greatest of laps from Papinter. He's in danger of losing DRS from Emil Lundell. The detection zone is right there. It was the little white line you saw going across the track, and he does still have it. You can see the little green light on the steering wheel that shows you have the DRS, but that wasn't his greatest lap of the race so far. But anyway, 17 laps in, Reed still leads from Lundell, Papinter, Rodis and Van Rensburg, with the latter two having dropped back a bit, and Jordan Gronkowski making a very early pit stop. Now if he goes onto the hard tyres, there is a possibility, and a genuine possibility at that, that you can run through to the end of the race from here. But of course, the problem with that is that you're running hard tyres for the majority
Oh,
of
it's
the
a
race.
long stop. It's a very long stop here. It's a black flag. He's got speeding in the lane. He's on soft tyres, but he's overcooked it jumping in. So if his title aspirations were already faded to a level of a ghost, then he's going to be looking around at this thinking, what on earth has just happened here? He's going to have to wait a very long time to get himself back into play here. It's a long stop and hold, and Jordan Gronkowski's race goes from bad to worse to near about diabolical. Look at this. It's going to be about 44 seconds, I reckon, on the box, and he'll come out right in front of your leading trio here, and he'll continue to stay in the box right now, and I think that'll be that then for what he's done. 45.9 seconds stationary, and he will find himself now behind your leading three and a lap down.
Well, there you go then. John Gronkowski having an absolute nightmare. I was warned by the cameraman Jay Kennedy that the pit lane is difficult. He says one note for this track: pit entry is very easy to get wrong. If you cut the corner on entry, and that might be what Jordan Gronkowski has done there, you get a 40-second stop and hold. You see the green painted line. I believe you're not allowed to go onto that green painted section at all, and that would be why Jordan Gronkowski has that penalty then.
Yep, it would be deemed as an unsafe pit entry here, and as such, the call made. Paul O'Regan then in the pits. I doubt that was a 0.6 second pit stop there, as he found himself then dealing with his stop as he went through. In fact, actually, he might have been, as he looked to pull himself in. He went up, he went down, he went away again. No, it would have been a 4-second stop, so he was able to get back off and going once more. But O'Regan onto the soft tyres, also now on a 2-stop strategy.
I was going to say, I know pit stops are much quicker nowadays than they used to be, but 0.6 seconds does sound rather impossible to me. But anyway, on to what will be lap 19 out of 70 in this race. And here's a replay. So this is how it should be done, apparently, the way that you enter the pit lane. As you can see, well clear of that green painted strip on the inside of the corner. And if you avoid that, you're fine. But if you even so close as touch it, then unfortunately you will be slapped with a 40-second penalty, which at a track like this will cost you a lap.
As things stand, Jacob Reed, if he were to finish where he is right now, would take his second Sim Speed title in the iRacing Grand Prix World Tour. He would find that result as Jason Green dives into the pits with a victory. He needs a top 5 here today, and Jordan Gronkowski to pick up the win in order to get things sorted. Gronkowski can keep the championship alive with a second place finish, but it would rely on Jacob Reed falling to 9th place or lower. Lundell really struggling here with internet issues over the course of this race. It hasn't stopped him from picking the purple check mark up for the fastest lap of the race on a 18.543, which was just fractionally faster than Jacob Reed on that last lap. But we've got to remember here that drivers like Jordan Gronkowski will look to try and unlap themselves here, and this might be where it gets a little bit tricky if he closes up to the back of Pepinta and Lundell and Jacob Reed and says, you know what, I'm on quicker tyres, I'd quite like it if I could go through. He puts an 18.6 down on the board. He was only slower than Jacob Reed on that last lap.
Yeah, so he will be catching, and he'll be theoretically faster because, of course, he's got those fresher, softer tyres. That's the advantage of doing a 2-stop strategy, that you can use softer tyres, and the disadvantage is that you will have to spend more time in the pit lane, and, of course, in Gronkowski's case, may end up picking a penalty if you get the pit lane entry wrong. So that's why I'm saying the majority of these drivers will do 1-stop strategies just because you can. And the drivers that we've seen coming in so far, Gronkowski, Green and O'Regan, are very much the dissenters from that opinion. But anyway, here's the fight between Van Rensburg, Lux, Kamai, and now Edouard Apari-Ari on the tail, and not that far back. All of these drivers, I would say, have improved over the course of the season, and now they're having a scrap for honours today as well.
Yeah, this will be for 5th place at the moment in this one, with George van Rensburg stemming the tide of all those drivers behind who want to try and find a way through. And this is why you start looking at, okay, the tyres can go for a 1-stop, but there is a reason why you'd want to do a 2-stop here, Caitlin, and that is just purely track position. If you can use a set of soft tyres, get back onto the back of this group before they make that stop, as Gronk sets the fastest lap of the race, but he needs to get back inside the top 10 in order to cash in his point. It might be a case that going on to a 2-stop strategy works because you just catch the drivers in front so much quicker.
Potentially, yeah, but it's very difficult to overtake here because it's such a tight circuit. You'll lose a lot of time in the faster sections. And even though it's quite a short pit lane, I do think this track lends itself to the 1-stop strategy. But we'll see, it's definitely viable, and Gronkowski's showing us that it's fast, but he'll probably stall when he gets to the back of Reed, Lundell and Papinta, because actually passing 3 people who were in a battle amongst themselves a lap above you is always going to be tricky to do, but we'll see what happens when he gets there.
Well, Jacob Reed for the first time has just broken 1 second here at the front of the field. Emil Lundell, I think, doesn't quite know what's hit him here. A couple of corners that have maybe been slightly subpar for his very high standard of driving, and Jacob Reed is now thinking about breaking away. Lenny Papinta still in the mix. Still, though, it focuses on the 5th place battle as George van Rensburg continues to keep Walter Lux behind him at the moment. Now, in 2 of his last 3 starts, it's been a 4th and a 5th place finish for George van Rensburg. It's been a fantastic run of form. As we take a look here, up over the crest of the hill, this will be, I believe, the pass made then by Kent Nielsen as he dived through on Thomas Wieck down at Drysack Corner. Wieck tried to throw it in deep, but because it's flat, he wouldn't have had the grip to really attack off the exit of the corner, and as such, an easy one for the Canadian Kent as into the pit. Oh, straight on! Straight on's gone Thomas Wieck.
Right, well, he's missed the pit entry. Okay, he's coming in now. Will he get a penalty for that one, or does it not work in the same way? But whatever, Thomas Wieck into the pits, and an unfortunate mistake, as here comes
here we go.
Van Rensburg's gone through to, well, he was in 5th. Lux is taking a look at him, and now takes a look to the outside. Van Rensburg will hold that one. Lux will get a bit of a better run, but it's so tricky to pass in this section, if not impossible. In fact, he's actually got Kamai even closer to him. Here's a replay of what happened to Thomas Wieck. He was clearly trying to pit and just missed it.
Yeah, he's been stuck in the lane for a long time. I think he has been caught with an unsafe pit entry. You can see actually 16 seconds. That might be more a front wing change there for him rather than a penalty. So Wieck will come out right in the midst, and Lenny Papinta's not going to be pleased about the way that he came out there, and he gets balked and stymied behind.
And
Gronk now trying to take chase of this, and this will be for position now between Wieck and Gronk for that move, and this is for 16th. Gronk now chasing. Wieck, by the way, has moved on to, I believe, a set of the medium tyres again. So he's back out on a second set of the medium, so he has to come in again and get a set of soft. But does Gronk go flinging one down the inside? He absolutely does. He gets alongside, commits to the corner, and they'll fight it out to turn 7 here, where Wieck's not going to let the issue sit. And Aspar corner turn 8 is very difficult to take the wide line, but flying around the outside, he gets it. Brilliantly done. And still they fight behind, and George van Rensburg is trying to hold off again round the outside of one. Will he do it a second time, or is it the inside of Aspar for Walter Lux? He confirms the move.
Great move. You weren't expecting him to get it done there, but he made it stick. And Walter Lux is through into 5th position now in the same part of the course that he failed to do so a lap ago. But yeah, great fighting there between Gronkowski and Wieck. Well, here's a replay of how Lux did it round the outside of the hairpin at Drysack, and that's not an easy move to make at all. Found the grip somehow and somewhere, but yeah, as I was going to say, sorry if I surprised anyone with my sharp intake of breath as Wieck moved aside for Lundell. It kind of looked, as there's Kamai now taking a look at Van Rensburg, it kind of looked like he was passing Reed or Lundell, and they're still side by side, and I think Kamai might have a chance here on the outside.
Oh, that's wonderful. You don't see too much of Michelin. Still has to fight then at turn 4, and it's Cito Pons where it's going to be sorted out. Kammeyer on the inside. Oh, that's a wonderful pass there by the German. That is simply wonderful by Florian Kammeyer. He's through on George van Rensburg.
He is indeed. So through goes Florian Kammer with a wonderful overtake. Van Rensburg has been a little unlucky the last couple of laps because, yeah, he hasn't quite been as fast as Lutz. Or here we see, well, something's about to happen. Is this another unsafe pit entry? Yes, it is. Look, overshoots it again. Now, who's that going wide?
Yeah, so that's Breteau who found reverse, and these drivers really struggling with the tight pit entry they got here. 4.4 seconds, so he got away without penalty, but still having to do all of that really does hurt, and we'll find that Gronkowski will go through, and Thomas Wieck, I think, will soon follow, but Wieck's in again. Oh, and Breteau's just spun it coming out the pits.
Okay, well, there he is on the exit of turn 1. Luckily, not in the immediate path of anyone else, as through goes Eduardo Radice, a lap ahead of him, in 4th position. But anyway, continuing on is Alain Breteau. There's Florian Kammer, still fighting with Van Rensburg. I was going to say Van Rensburg was unlucky there, because he really didn't do much wrong. He just got passed in a very brave and bold way by one driver and then the other.
Yeah, there's a lack of pace at the end of the day for George Van Rensburg to hold those drivers behind. It's been a very tough race for him, holding everyone back, but has been unable to really charge at it. Aggressive on the brakes. Edward Apariari, I think, is going to want a little piece of the same sort of action out there. The South African now down to 7th. Edward Apariari still in 8th place. A drop of 1 position so far. That position to Florian Kammer, who is up 4 places in this one. Car off the road in front of them, and it's Alain Breteau again. This time he's found the barriers over at Nieto, and now Alain Breteau is really having a torrid race.
Well, at least he'll get another shot at getting the pit lane right. We're going to see a replay of what put him in this situation. There's the spin. The car swings around mid-corner, and he does actually avoid the barriers, so he will get away without having to make a pit stop. But yeah, very close. I think he got very lucky to avoid the wall here, as we're on board with Eduardo Apariari on the back of George Van Rensburg.
Gap slowly increasing at the front of this field. It's 2 seconds now, the lead for Jacob Reed over Emil Lundell. We focus on Edward Apariari trying to find a way past George Van Rensburg. His job will be made a little bit easier if Florian Kammer can sneak away to 1 second's worth of advantage. It's about 1.2 over the top of Cito Pons, and looking down the hill, there's no DRS available there for George Van Rensburg. It's full bore for Edward Apariari, who thinks about throwing it to the inside. The lane's not there. He wasn't quite close enough at Dreisack. And once more here on lap 26, he's going to have to think about waiting behind. But we're soon into the window of the one-stoppers. I'd say anywhere from lap 30 onwards, you could feasibly make a stop.
Lap 30 onwards indeed, because that would leave 40 laps, and you can absolutely do that on hard tyres, on medium tyres. They do have to use 2 compounds of tyre though, so maybe extend it 5 laps longer and go on to the softs, or maybe the hards are the better ones to go on. To be honest, I think from what we've seen of the 2 stoppers, it might well be a soft tyre kind of track. Here's Kent Nielsen in 11th position in this race, on a recovery drive. Pulled a good move on Thomas Wieck before Wieck had a few more issues. And Nielsen now on the back of Michael Rudeau. Nielsen should theoretically be quicker here, but as I said before, this is a difficult track to overtake her on, and into the pits now. And another one
catching it wrong. Rudeau this time having to scramble across the grass, try and get himself sorted. He completely locked the rear axle up, diving into the corner. Nobody can quite get it right. As this has happened, this is Lenny Papinta diving down the inside of Emil Lundell. This would have been for 2nd position, and he would have mastered that one brilliantly. And cheekily, Jordan Gronkowski follows in suit past. So Gronk able to find his way through. Remember, he's a lap down in 15th, but Rudeau at 3.9 second stop, going broadside as he locked it up, trying to get it slowed down for the hairpin of the final corner and the pit lane. Keep an eye on that from all of these drivers as they look to try and get themselves into the pits.
Papinta needed to make that move. He's lost the DRS from Jacob Reed, and this is what I was saying earlier. If Lundell starts to drop back, then he does as well, and that's why he's made that move. But Jordan Gronkowski's all over his tail now. He might actually do well to let him go and then follow him for a bit, with Gronkowski clearly being the quicker car on these soft tyres. But yeah, this pit lane entry is absolutely brutal. I hope these drivers all have people talking to them, telling them just get that pit entry right. It's so more important, so much more important than doing it quickly, because you will get a penalty and you might well slide back onto the track and have more problems then.
George van Rensburg under a bit of trouble through turns 3 and 4 and down the hill. Is there a chance then potentially to find that move? I think it's covered brilliantly. They've caught Florian Kammerer back up inside 1 second, and as such George van Rensburg has the defence that he needs in order to cover off any moves from cars behind, like Edward Apariari. If you were in Edward's shoes here, Caitlin, would you decide to make that call to pit in early? Because how often can you stare at the lilac and pink car that is there in front, which has been pretty much the bane of his existence for the entirety of this run?
Yeah, I think I would. I think the undercut would be effective here. And also we know the tyres can run pretty long in this race. So yeah, I think he should definitely at least consider pitting earlier, unless his strategy says otherwise. But we're watching Edward Apariari on the back of George van Rensburg here. Up the hill, DRS open, not close enough for an overtake, and may well be losing time as a result. You can see Ronaldo Augusto in the background. But anyway, they're both losing time to Florian Kammerer here, and I think that's what matters for Edward Apariari.
Well, I think the drives they're going to have to worry about now is car number 7, which is Paul O'Regan out there, who is running 1:18.7s currently at the moment. And as he crossed the line, he put a 19.1 down on the board that time through. O'Regan, remember, was very early, and that is Gronk off the road and having to recover himself back on, and that is again Nieto corner, which has been pretty much the one where all the trouble's been. He's thrown it in a little bit too deep, he's avoided the barriers, but everyone's just losing the rear through there. Rear limited grip seeming to be a huge problem.
They're lucky that there's so much of a gravel trap there. If the barrier was a couple of centimetres closer to the track, we'd have seen 3 people hit it already, Alain Breteau being one of them. And I can't remember who the first driver to spin off at that corner was, but Jordan Gronkowski has now joined them. Down the straight we go, lap 30 out of 70. Reed continues to lead from Papinta, Lundell, Radice and Lux. We saw on the graphic at the start, the medium tyres are expected to be able to go at least 40 laps, so they're still not required to stop just yet. And of course, you're not required to stop until it's absolutely necessary that you have to. But with these drivers, I think they'll be focusing more on how their car is handling right now in the dirty air of the cars in front of them, and in relation to their opponents, to see if they can get that overtake done.
298 kilometers an hour from Edward Apariari, 295 by George van Rensburg in the slipstream, so it's clear there's a little bit more pace in a straight line from Edward, but not enough to get the pass on George van Rensburg, and I think that's very telling at this stage of the race, that there can't be a way forward. 3.3 now your gap at the front of this field, and still you start to wonder here, at what point does the rubber band snap and you say there isn't really that much of a chance? Lenny's going to have to throw something in early if he wants to come in, but George van Rensburg again, who's been pretty much the main focus of this race, because he's just keeping Edward Apariari at bay. They've got 18 seconds back to Ronaldo Augusto. That's the gap they've afforded themselves. So I think they're pretty much in the wheelhouse to say, you know what have we got here? It's 32 seconds to Paul O'Regan, 19.4 on that last lap, compared to O'Regan the lap before last being an 18.8. So they're losing 0.6 of a second a lap. It's just a question of how long does the soft tyre live?
Lap 31 of 70, not that long before the exact halfway point in this race. And a bit of a move there. Well, we've cut away from it, but it looked as if, and he does.
Got it.
So wow, great move there from George van Rensburg up the inside of Florian Kammerer. Interesting to see they were catching him the last couple of laps, because Kammerer had been getting away, and Kammerer running a little bit wide there. I wonder if his tyres are going off a bit earlier than the others.
Look at this.
Yeah, you see a little bit of a lunge from George van Rensburg just as we cut away from the shot, and through he goes on the inside. Very nicely done, and that's what Schumacher was supposed to do.
It was there. You saw Florian Kamar just leave enough for him. He even had the one shimmy. I'm sure he thought about that right-hand side tyre and thought, what happens if I clip this? Answer to that was, no, don't do that. You've got a race to think about here, and he's managing that quite wonderfully here. And ultimately, he'll lose the place, and George van Rensburg with a little second life out there at this point. Emil Lundell has not lost the back of Lenny Papinta here, sat in second position. So Lenny is doing what he needs to right now on what is his first start of the season. That is hold station, try and get what you want. In comes Ken Nielsen.
So Nielsen into the pits, nearing the halfway point. We'll see what he does. Feasibly, the soft tyres might actually be able to go to the end from here, but it would be tricky. Florian Kamai here with Apari Ari on the outside. If you can keep an overlap on the outside of that corner, you can turn it into the inside for the next corner. That's what I think Apariari did that on someone earlier on, didn't he? But anyway,
oh, mistake by Pinter. He's had to take the long lap penalty through the final corner of Jorge Lorenzo, and he's given up second place to Emil Lundell. A big mistake then for Lenny as he drops into the corner. He just gets caught on the curb.
It's almost like he got confused as to which bit was the racetrack, but yeah, Lenny Papinta with his first real mistake of the day. Lundell goes back through, and he's got to do all of that again, including catching him again.
Yeah, and he'll have to pass him again, and look at what it's done. It's now 5.5 seconds as Apariari up to Expo 92, thinking of it. Kammeyer is really slow in a straight line. I think it's really telling. He only got to 260 kilometers an hour. Apariari was up at 280 trying to make the move. It's an uber downforce set here from Florian Kammeyer.
I don't remember the last time my Uber had much downforce, but yes, it is indeed. Florian Kammeyer running in 7th position, doing a good job so far, but we're on board with Eduardo Apariari. Takes a look to the outside, sells a little bit of a dummy. Kammeyer goes defensive, and Apariari runs slightly wide off the track. Probably would have picked up a 1x point for that. But anyway, resumes in 8th position, and they've now got, is that Thomas Beek on their tail, a lap down?
That's Brito a lap down, who's there on the tail. So number 15 car is going to want to try and break away with them as much as possible at this phase of the race. We are now approaching halfway. Jacob Reed, 5 seconds clear at the front of your field, and that's a hefty hit for Ken Nielsen, who has found the barriers coming through turn 2, or the exit of 2 into 3. Completely demolishes the front nose as he smacked the gap between the guardrails and hit tyre.
And Nielsen has only just pitted, so this is his outlap, I believe. And that's what cold tyres will do for you sometimes. And he actually clipped the wall right before the end of the Armco barrier. That's unlucky. If he'd gone into the tyre barrier, I still think he would have lost his front wing, but it won't matter now. Into the pits comes Ronaldo Augusto. You're seeing them gradually drop off from the back of the medium-tired runners, and that indicates, as we're nearly at the halfway point exactly, it indicates that the pit window is well and truly on us right now.
It's very much there. This is a case of not quite the season of the sticks. It's very much a case of the season of the pits at this moment, which we find ourselves in at this stage. Kammeyer still holding off the relentless driving of Edward Apariari. He's not someone who goes out there and makes dramatic moves as Edward. He's someone who very much is happy to sit in the pack, and he'll bore you to submission. Yeah, he will. And it's a really effective way of making moves, actually, because most drivers, they won't want to tell you this. Now, does Apariari get the pit lane entry correct? I didn't see with the green line on the inside, but it looked okay to me. Walter Lux also into the pits. Most drivers won't tell you this, but they do make mistakes quite regularly, and that's why the drivers like Jacob Reed, for example, are so good, because they just do not make those mistakes, and that's why they're able to make these overtakes, because they just wait for their opponents to put a wheel slightly wide to mess up a corner just a little bit. And there's Lux into the pits, and it looks as if his was a bit closer. Oh, he's run wide. Is that a penalty for Lux, or has he got away with it? No, he got away with it. It's the inside that gets the penalty. The outside you can just about scramble around with, and as such, you can see how close he was actually to Eduardo Radi, so he's done a good job. Jacob Reed continuing out there, 5 seconds clear, and champion-elect as things stand, as Emil Lundell is second and Lenny Papinta in third, is maybe a little bit worried that Gronk's going to want his way through, and that's probably more of what he's dealing with right now. Jordan Gronkowski proving he's got pace and trying to take his fastest lap bonus point into the top 10. He's now up into 13th place, and he'll want to get to about Jason Green, who by comparison has just gone through Cito Pond's corner. So he's got about 4 corners to chase down, or about a third of a lap here. So he's probably sitting here as Jordan Gronkowski thinking, what do I need to do to pick up a bit more? In comes George van Rensburg.
Sorry, I was on mute there, but yeah, it's interesting how they really do seem to be coming in one by one from the back of the medium-tired runners. And going on to the soft tyres, there's Kent Nielsen, who has had to pit twice in this race now. George van Rensburg dropping behind Walter Lux, and we're just passing where he'll be coming out of the pit lane on the left-hand side. But yeah, it's almost been one at a time, really, from the back of the medium-tired runners to the front of the softs.
Yeah, and look at that. So Edward Apariari out of the pit could only manage to get right behind George van Rensburg. So perfect cover by George stops Apariari from jumping through. Both of them ahead of Paul O'Regan on the road, which is important. And in front of them, that's the lap down Thomas Veek getting through for position on the lap down Kent Nielsen.
It is indeed, but they're a long way out of the sim speed points, I'm afraid to say. Still probably makes a slight difference in the iRacing points standings, but
in terms
of and into the pits comes Florian Kamar, as you say. So another one directly from the back of the medium-tired runners. We've only got 4 remaining now, at least from the drivers who started on medium tyres, and they are the top 4: Reed, Lundell, Papinta, and Radiz.
Yeah, and Eduardo Radiz has really dropped back now. He's 22 seconds. Missed box! Oh, that's big for Florian Kamar. In the context of this one, there's a little search for the move over at Lorenzo for Edward Apariari. He knows that time's of the importance. He's got to go now. But that missed box will really cost Florian Kamar. You can see he just scoots on through, and he has to roll back a full revolution of his Pirelli wheels. So just like that, trouble brews, and he now finds himself behind both of them.
And we've already seen how much that can cost you this season. It cost Emil Lundell a victory last time out at wherever we were last time. It's been way too long. but yeah, unfortunately for... It was Coacher, of course it was.
Oh, look at that.
Unfortunately for Kammer, he's got a bit more work to do, but yeah, getting past the back markers nice and quickly.
Yeah, needed to get by quickly there, did Florian Kammer, as Kent Nielsen did a very good job of staving himself out of the way. This is, of course, the Andalusia region, and it's known as Eduardo Radiz comes in from 4th position. This region very much known for its sherry export. Oh, Edward Apariari's off!
And again, just avoids the barriers, and a very, very well-designed gravel trap there, just the right length. Eduardo Radiz... Sorry, Edward Apariari, wrong Edward. But there you see him going off. These cars, they really do snap around midway through the corner. It's probably right as the drivers apply the accelerator.
Wow.
And it's always in exactly the same place.
Look at that lap from Walter Lux. It's a 1:17.9, and that's what it does. He's leapfrogged Radiz in the stop.
Wow, so Walter Lux there doing a fantastic job. He could really challenge for, well, he's 4th at the minute, possibly podium potential later on. Now, who's this coming in?
That's your leader, Jacob Reed, absolutely textbook as he finds himself into the lane. Emil Lundell stays out, so too does Lenny Papinta. They'll have to overcut if they want to try and win this race, but Jacob Reed will go down to the penultimate box in pit lane, look to get himself stopped, and now we'll look at his pit time. He'll go up onto the jacks, he'll come off of the jacks, he'll be on soft compound tyres, and he'll all in all have a pit lane transit of 27.4 seconds. He will rejoin in absolute crystalline clean air at this moment, and that is exactly what he wanted, a perfect stop. So now Emil and Lenny, I think, are going to have to react here.
Just saw Ronaldo Augusto get back into the top 10 ahead of Jason Green. So that's a change of position, and it's gone the way of Augusto, who was ahead before the pit window, actually. So getting back through, and another fastest lap now for Walter Lux, 1:17.6. There's a replay. That's what happened with Ronaldo or Gusto, a very straightforward move. Like I said last time out, with Gusto, and into the top 10.
Yeah, it's been very much a paint-by-numbers overtake there. Can't really ask for too much more in the way that that's been constructed. Do they dive then from the front? In comes in comes Emil Lundell. Lenny Papinta will stay out for another lap here, so Lenny is going to go longer still. So Emil Lundell, we expect Jacob Reed will pick up where he wants to, because he's going through Ferrari right now and will be heading into the final corner of Lorenzo, looking to try and push and take maybe that purple check mark away from the Austrian Volta Lux. So now he makes that run through. Not much that can be done there from Emil Lundell. He's off and away and looking to charge with a 27.6 second transfer, so 0.2 of a second slower, and he comes out actually with a bit of trouble because Alain Breteau was just there on the exit of Expo 92. He just clears him and is off and away again. So Emil Lundell also getting a little bit of traffic not to play games, which may be to Lenny's advantage.
And to make matters worse for Emil Lundell, that was an excellent outlap from Jacob Reed. You can see his advantage now is about 7 seconds, which is more than it was before. So Reed continuing to pull away here, and he will surely take the lead when Lenny Papinta pits. Lundell had to pit that time around, had to cover off Jacob Reed, but to be honest, he would have done with pitting slightly earlier than Reed. And I think was just waiting to see what his rival would do in the race. Papinta surely will come in now. Does he get it cleanly? It's been a really problematic pit entry. He locks up the front left, he avoided the green line, and as a result will get away with this pit stop.
Alain Breteau becomes the first driver in this field to pick up 17 instant points over the course of this race. That, by the iRacing rules and regulations, is a drive-through penalty. He will get a drive-through penalty then for every 8 that follow, and he has a massive moment trying to dive into the pit. Story of Alan's race, really. Him getting caught up in troubles. Papinta now leaves the pit, and Emil Lundell is long gone by comparison there. And that, for Lenny Papinta, was not the stop he wanted, but it's safe in the sense that he can consolidate third for the moment. He's got 9 seconds here over Volta Lux's Jason Green, just outside the top 10 season. Eduardo Radice now pick up the fastest lap.
And if you do have a penalty for picking up too many instant points, please do try your best not to pick up more instant points while serving your penalty, because more instant points will lead to quicker penalties from then on. But anyway, yep, fastest lap, as you say, from Eduardo Radice. He's 4 seconds behind Walter Lutz, still very much in that fight. Talking of fighting, Lundell also has gained time on Papinta. It looks as if the cars in second and third in this race, Lundell and Papinta, may have actually left their stops a little bit late, especially considering that these tyres are going to last right up until the end of the race and will probably be relatively quick still at the end. And that has given Jacob Reed the advantage.
Well, they'll be looking at trying to overcut this and build the advantage through this phase of the race. Jacob Reed has just put a 1:17 flat down on the board to say, you know what, I'm quickest, and that's 0.3 quicker than what anybody else has done. Lundell put a 17.2 down on that last lap. Papinta, his outlap was a 22.5. So I would say absolutely wonderful on this lap. And Eduardo Radice here, 17.2. He's not done with Volta Lux here. He's closing that gap down, and he took 0.4 out of him on that last lap. So I think Radice here thinks 4th place is still very much an opportunity for him.
Well, if he thinks that, he's absolutely right, because it is. Slight change of position further back. Looks like Michel Rodeau is fighting with Jason Green, but actually it's Green coming into the pits. So that's what's happened back there. And there were a few drivers who pitted very early for soft tyres. I think Green was one of them, so that does make sense. And they're in a kind of mini second pit window a little bit further back in the race. Yeah, Jay Kennedy just confirming that that's his second stop of the race.
Yeah, so that's a case of trying to run the 2-stop strategy here. Jason Green, another 4 seconds then as he was stationary, and it's getting quicker and quicker. Jacob Reed, 16.4 Wow. Out there. That's a wonderful lap time. It will not be official because there was an off track during his laps as he went through, and he's picked up a few actually over the course of this race. We don't have the luxury of knowing how many instant points he's got because we're not iRacing admin for this server. So basically Jacob Reed here, he's got to be careful that he doesn't pick up too many of them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have seen a couple of different laps invalidated for Jacob Reed, and that doesn't really affect much, especially since he's already got the fastest lap of the race and is always one of the quickest drivers, but sometimes you can push slightly over the limit even if your car is still pointing in the right direction. The thing with Jacob is that he pretty much never makes mistakes in the traditional sense, where he'll go off and he'll lose time or whatever. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't push it right to the limit and sometimes slightly over.
Florian Kamar trying to stay in range here with George Van Rensburg after the half spin by Edward Apariari. Put him back 6 seconds then on this group. So the chase is still there. That one will count though for Jacob Reed as he goes through. That is a 16 flat. Wow.
Goodness me. It won 16.009, so 4 tenths quicker than he went on his invalidated lap, and a whole second quicker than he went on his previous fastest lap, his previous official fastest lap. He will lead this race by 10 seconds before long, and that's a lot more, it goes without saying. So that's a lot more than it was before this pit window. He's immediately turned those tyres on, he's immediately got into the rhythm, and he's going even quicker than he was before the pit stop. And this is a real Jacob Reed masterclass.
It's what he does. It's what he does so very, very well. And there's not much that you can really argue about it with the way that he's driving. George Van Rensburg here in 6th, just holding off the gap then with Florian Kamar here on lap 44 here of 70 at the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto here in Andalusia in Spain. As it stands, Jacob Reed is the only driver who can stop Jacob Reed from picking up the title here today. He knows that there needs to be points scored here of the top 2 for Jordan Gronkowski, who is down in 12th position and in a non-point scoring place as things stand. And because of that, it means that the title looks like it is under lock and key for 2024 with 26 laps to go here in Spain. George Van Rensburg, who's been keeping himself close. That gap there behind to Florian Kamar stays honest, but keep an eye on Radice's gap to Volta Lux, because that gap all of a sudden has just crept out by 1/10 of a second, and it's sat at an awkward 1.4, 1.5, 2 seconds to 1 second. Maybe the hardest gap to close in all of sim racing.
Still a long way to go though. There's that cliche that we're nowhere near the end of the race just yet. And that's very true. 25 laps, a lot can happen in that time. As we've seen so far this race, 25 laps ago, Reed, Lundell and Papinto were all together in a line going for the lead of the race, and we would not have been able to call it. Jordan Gronkowski, meanwhile, makes his second pit stop in the day in a race that has not been going his way and doesn't seem to be getting any better.
No, it doesn't. He didn't have the pace in qualifying, and the mistake that he had during the race, the black flag penalty, really put his 2-stop into disrepute. It doesn't look like that was the quickest strategy here today, with those drivers at the moment finding themselves a little bit ways away from where they think they should be. So I think this has been a tough day at the office for Jordan Gronkowski, and I think it's been a humbling day at the office, and has pretty much summed up his last 5 rounds of the season, where all of the luck that he had early doors has just simply evaporated, Caitlin, because his last 4 results in this series have been a DNF, a 6th place finish and a non-start. And you put this then outside of the points, he hasn't finished outside of 6th place when he's finished all season long. He's just been caught up in the wrong thing at the wrong time. Silverstone with Anthony Catt comes to mind. Monza and Aragon looked like they were really big seismic hits in his championship effort.
Yeah, I'm not sure he'll really be thinking about the championship anymore. He'll just be hoping for an upturn in form soon. And it's a little bit unfortunate, a little bit of a sad way for his season to fizzle out. But unfortunately, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes, and you just got to deal with it as it comes. We're on board now with Jason Green on the back of Anthony Catt, and Green, having pitted recently, should be able to do this one relatively easily. And now we switch to Eduardo Radice, who's still fighting with Lux and seems to have got closer on this lap.
Now this is an important battle in the context of their championship, because they are racing for third in the championship between them. Radice did have a short spell over the course of this season, a 5-race spell from Silverstone to Monza where he did not show up, but he's had 10 podiums this season, 1 non-finish at VIR, a 10th at Phillip Island, a 9th at Long Beach, and a 9th with the fastest lap at Aragon. So he's been looking at that compared to Walter Lux, who's missed 3 races this season, Long Beach, Montreal, Barcelona, and has certainly been putting in the consistent finishes. The difference being that Walter Lux has only had 2 podiums all year, a 3rd at Spa and a 2nd at Aragon. But at the moment, that is a wonderful pass by Eduardo Radice, who had to get it done at dry sack, and did so with aplomb.
I'm amazed that Radice got that done, though. The previous corner, he was in the gravel. I don't know if you saw that, Jake, because I know you were quite busy reading out their results. But yeah, Radice, as he came around the corner before the DRS zone, went very, very wide, kicked up the gravel. We're going to see a replay of that now. Look at that. He's fully in the gravel, all 4 wheels. Gets it back on the road, opens the DRS and makes the overtake. How do you do that?
With pace, with skill, Eduardo Radice going very much the Sardinia rally route, I would say, rather than jumping forward and making the pass the way he wanted to. Now behind is the case of how does Florian Kamai get through, because Kamai, remember, is struggling in a straight line to find passes.
Yeah, he is, but if what we've just seen from Eduardo Radice is anything to go by, you can pass in some of the most unexpected ways here at Jerez. So we'll keep an eye on this fight between Kamai and George van Rensburg. Maybe he needs to stuff his tyres in the gravel and see if that will help somehow. Maybe it gives you more grip if you're kind of studded with the little stones on or whatever. Well, he's taking a look up the inside, but van Rensburg had the corner. And that's the disadvantage of taking a look when you're too far back. Your opponent gets a better run out of the corner and you've got to do it again. But he'll have another chance, I'm sure.
He's got many chances here. He's got 22 of them if he wants to over there at Dry Sack Corner to get the move done on George van Rensburg out of Palucci and into the Ayrton Senna chicane, and then rushing along out of here through Ferrari Corner and then over towards the final corner of Jorge Lorenzo to end the lap out. And you're really getting the sense here of how tough a circuit is. This is the second time I've seen Florian Kamai have that little snap correction of oversteer on the exits. He's slightly too early onto the throttle. He's really done well. You look at Florian Kamai at the start of this season, Caitlin, couldn't buy a finish in the points for the first 5 rounds. 2 non-finishing positions, a non-start, and then 2 16th place finishes overall at Suzuka and Mugello. From there, he's gone from strength to strength. He's got 3 podiums to his name, one of which a race win.
Big switch there, but a good save. Yeah, Kamai here, who might be having a look here, goes to the inside of van Rensburg again, just as he did on the last lap. Van Rensburg covers it off. He's had, and I mean this in the most respectful way, a little bit of a Pastel Maldonado style season where he's shown flashes of pace every now and again. Usually, unfortunately, not that close to contention, but then he had that one standout drive at Aragon where he absolutely blitzed the opposition and got his first victory of the day after a great fight with a couple of different drivers. And Jacob Reed, of course, crashed out on that day, but it looked as if Kamai was going to win the race anyway. And now he's back to the mid-pack, although fighting hard with George van Rensburg, and I'm sure this will keep going for as long as he wants it to. 20 laps to go in this race. Reed leads by 14.5 seconds now over Lundell. The Pinter seems to be getting a bit closer to Lundell as well. There might still be a fight for second in this race. And then it's Radice, Lux, van Rensburg and Kamai who we're watching. Apariari, Augusto and Rudeau.
It was 0.3 of a second on that last lap. Lenny Papinta took out of Emil Lundell, pulled the gap down to 2.3 seconds on the road. This time it's close but no cigar here for one Mr. Florian Kammer, who I'm sure will have Christoph Klinkmann in his ears saying, just get wide. It's the first thing you do when you think about how do you distract a driver in front, how do you get that free move to happen. You just got to make your car seem like it's in both of the mirrors.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? But the difficulty with having a car that struggles in a straight line is that that's where the overtakes are set up. You know, if you don't have a car that can pull alongside your opponent in a straight line, you don't have much chance of actually making the overtake by the time you reach the braking zone. So Kammer is in a bit of a tricky situation right now. Even if he has the pace, passing is another thing altogether.
It very much is, and again he chases right up to the back then through the opening corner, that one of course being Expo 92, up over the crest at Michelin, and then dropping back down the hill. Alain Breteau is back into the pits again. This would be a scheduled stop for him, his second stop, or sorry, actually technically his third stop of the race. So he's in, trying to get those tyres changed and back out and away again he will go. But for once more, Emil Lundell, we focus on him for a moment because that gap's clawing back through, and again there's that search to the inside. Now you might get drive off the exit here, Florian, if you want the pass. George Van Rensburg, though, has been an apex king in the way that he's been able to mastermind the inside of the track, and there's not really much more that Florian can do except throw it in a little bit deeper and almost slingshot a block pass.
He pried the door open, did Kammer, and George Van Rensburg was never quite able to shut the door, but got the run on the exit anyway. And we still go nose to tail through the final sector of this track up towards the Curva Jorge Lorenzo and out towards the start-finish line. In 1985 here, Nigel Mansell was sure they moved the finish line during the race as they waved the checkered flag just too early for him to pass the great Ayrton Senna. And on this occasion, there might be a pass. Oh, it looked as if Florian Kammer had something cooking up there on the way into the hairpin, but has to back out of it yet again, and now he's got to line him up for the straight.
Yeah, he'll have to try that again, and it's worth keeping in mind here as well that Emil Lundell, by virtue of countback, could move inside the top 10 with his second place finish. It would require Paul O'Regan to not have a point scoring finish here today. He's currently 11th, trying to chase down Michel Rudeau, who's about 2 corners in front of him. Gap between Lundell and Papinta, though, is 1.4 seconds, and Papinta could spoil that day for Emil Lundell, who's trying to work his way inside the top 10. So now you start thinking about that. Cat will now go into the pits. Radice has been unable to pull away from Volta Lux, so as much as he wants. How much has he burnt the tyres up?
Okay, 17 laps to go in this race. Cat and Breteau both in the pits. Anthony Cat's alternate strategy nowhere near as competitive as he might have hoped, especially with that spin that he had earlier on. And a second drive-through for Breteau, yes, that's... Oh, and that's Kammer, and he's made the move. So Florian Kammer has now got up into 6th position, and he did it into turn 1.
He needed to do it into turn 1. It was one of the places where he can attack very well out of the final corner at Jorge Lorenzo. We take a look at this, so he takes the wide pivoting line in. He can hold as close as he wants, and that slight wiggle from George Van Rensburg pretty much set it up as neatly as you like, straight up the inside, no argument about it. Florian Kammer now moves back into 6th position, and this has been a very nice renaissance from him at this late stage of the season, with 4 rounds left of this season after this, with Interlagos, Portimao, Magny-Cours and Hockenheim on the horizon. You look at it and go, well, these final rounds are all very much a case of similar characteristics to here at Jerez. Pretty much not the uber fast circuits and the high speed circuits, but are technical and need the downforce.
Yeah, exactly. The layout of this track is quite similar to Magny-Cours in particular, so I expect the drivers will be using a relatively similar setup for that one. Interlagos, you could argue about that as well, but the way that the straights are set up, where they're all kind of in one section of the course, means that you very easily can overtake there. And it's a lot easier than it is here at Jerez. I'm very much looking forward to Interlagos next time out. It's a track, it's one of my favourite tracks actually on any calendar. And is that another stop from Cat? He was in a lap ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's got a black flag, so this will be for instant points for Anthony Cat as he hits 70 and then has to continue on his race. So it's been very tough on instant points here today, and I think it's been quite telling for Anthony Cat and what he's been trying to get out of this race. Papinta, who is more known for his exploits in F1 esports and what he's been able to do with the Formula One games, he's now looking here at iRacing thinking, you know what, this is nice for a one-off. If I push an attack to the level that I know I'm capable of doing, I could go places. He's a race-winning caliber driver. He's up there proving with Emil Lundell, who is a driver, Caitlin, that you look at, who's only got a matter of time before he picks up his first win here in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. You look around at Lenny Papinta, he is someone that if he wanted to go for a season, he could take it to Jacob Reed.
He absolutely could. It's always difficult to say when a driver's going to get their first win because it really depends on what Jacob Reed does. He's a driver who pretty much never makes mistakes with the exception of Aragon. And so you really have to get him on a bad day in order to win a race yourself. But Lundell and Papinta are there to pick up the scraps if something was to happen to Jacob Reed. 15 laps to go in this one, and Lundell and Papinta look as if they're going to have a scrap again. I really think Lundell, by pitting a lap earlier than Papinta, gained a lot more than Papinta would have expected in the pit window. They both dropped back massively from Jacob Reed simply through pitting later than him as well. And it's taken Lenny this long to get back into contention again. But in contention he is, and I really do think that this fight is going to kick off very shortly.
Well, half the stint is about how long it's taken Lenny Papinta here to close up here to Emil Lundell, and Emil will look behind. That gap is now firmly within 1 second, and suddenly Lenny has got himself a really good opportunity here, has the Frenchman, to get second position overall, and this would be an important mark in the context of Emil's season, because remember, he could move into 10th place in the championship with this result, finishing by virtue, as he starts now horribly blinking once again, by virtue of his seconds out there, which would be 2 seconds and a third. Now we'll take a little look here on the SimSpeed replay. I believe this is Thomas Vieck going back through on Ken Nielsen. The road hard travelled, he tried, picks up a run off the exit, inside for turn 7. We'll have the inside for Aspar corner at turn 8, and gets it wonderfully done.
Two inseparable drivers, it's quite sweet actually, down in 15th and 16th position. You see that continued blinking from Emil Lundell, and you have to wonder what he can see on his screen and what the other drivers see on theirs, and how that might be affecting this battle. But I think Lundell's primary concern would be if the internet does go out fully and he has a disconnect, because then he'd come away with nothing as a result of that. We're on board now with Lenny Papinta, going up to 280 miles per hour by the time you get to the right-hander, 275 more like, but still pretty darn quick. And then onto the straight, and it's even more impressive when you realise that this is one of the lowest average speed tracks that we have in the calendar, and they still nearly reached 300 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, and you looked out of there, and it was a case where Emil Lundell actually clipped the gravel over the top of Cito Pons, and it's really put Lenny onto the back of him right now. That rear spoiler is as massive as it's going to be all season. You can't see past it out there at this moment in time. I think it's a really, really telling phase of this championship, that at least right now these drivers are looking around at each other thinking, what more can we do? More blinking, heavy blinking from Emil Lundell. He is really struggling with that out there as his ping fluctuates like crazy at this moment in time. Officially, we've got Alain Breteau as a retiree from this race. He is 7 laps down and officially out. So Victor Ouad and Alain Breteau are officially classified as retirees here with 13 laps to go. And now drumming up a little bit of support here is Lenny Papinta, who wants that second place and wants to make sure it's an extra week's wait for someone of Emil Lundell's caliber to move into the top 10 in the SimSpeed Championship.
It was a difficult day for Alain Breteau, that's why he's out of the race, but now we have this fight on between Emil Lundell and Lenny Pepinter. Pepinter very close in the braking zone. They got a little bit of traffic coming up. That's Michael Rudeau, who was the last driver put a lap down by Jacob Reed, and will be the next driver put a lap down by Lundell and Pepinter. There's another driver up the road from Rudeau as well. So they're reaching traffic here, and it's competitive traffic at that. Cars
That's
running
Paul
in
O'Regan.
the top 10. Unlikely to get to dive out of the way. And yeah, Paul O'Regan here. Okay, so there's actually O'Regan and Rudeau between these guys and Jacob Reed in the race lead.
Yeah, and just as he was catching Michel Rudeau, and he is catching Michel Rudeau, here is Paul O'Regan. He sees that his main challenger for the top 10 in the championship is breezing by him and putting him a lap down. O'Regan has effectively nickled and dimed his points, and he'd like an extra one just to stay inside that top 10 a little longer, Caitlin.
Yeah, sorry, I'm scrabbling around to unmute myself whenever that happens. But yeah, 12 laps to go. We have Jacob Reed leading from Lundell, Pepinter, Radice and Lux, and there is Lenny Pepinter. But you're right to say that the drivers they're passing are fighting for this top 10 because they're less likely to dive out of the way quicker. Of course, you don't have to get out of the way. The blue flags are not as mandatory as they are in the real world of Formula One, for example. It's mainly out of courtesy that the drivers will get out of the way, and also out of the knowledge that they'd be holding themselves up more if they fought, and that's a mistake from Lundell. Lundell got it all wrong through the Ayrton Senna chicane, and through went Lenny Pepinter. That makes it so much easier for him. He didn't even have to fight, and he's had it handed to him on a little bit of a plate there.
Well, he's so aggressive over the inside curb, he actually lifts up the two right-hand side tyres, gets an over-fluctuation of grip from the left-hand side, which only wants to throw the car over to the right as it continues on. Had to catch the steering. Any lesser of a driver would have thrown it in the walls, but Emil Lundell, of course, the driver with the number 13 on the side of his car, indicating he's got the 13th highest iRacing in this field, just about holds on to third place, but would be 3 points short as things stand of moving into the top 10 in the SimSpeed Championship, with Pepinter now into second position. And Emil Lundell right now is reminding me of a 2023 Jordan Gronkowski here, Caitlin, a driver who very much is on the cusp of those victories and showing that they are championship quality drivers.
Yeah, for sure, but possibly just a few too many mistakes to challenge the likes of Jacob Reed. Both Lenny and Emil have made mistakes today. That's why they've swapped places a few times. Every time it's been slightly unnecessary, and that's what separates the good from the great, realistically. But there you go. So Pepinter is now ahead of Emil Lundell. Who's got a black flag, sorry, Jay?
It's Thomas Wieck, who is in the pit and serving his drive-through penalty then, as he looks to come in, get that all sorted, and then find himself off and away again. So for Thomas Wieck, in fact, he stops in the box. I'm not sure that will count as a served penalty, which is there. It will be a stop-and-go penalty, sorry, I find myself looking at here. So Thomas Wieck will have to sit, wait, and go again, as Paul O'Regan here in 11th position. This is for a point against Michel Rudeau. Can he find a way through on the inside? No, he can't, but he's got to be quite alert here to what's coming up behind them, because they're running currently 1:18.6s. Rudeau was a 21.3 that last time by. If they take too long with it, Gronk's not a million miles away, and he could still salvage a point.
That would be big for Jordan Gronkowski, admittedly. Wouldn't really mean that much in the grand scheme of things, but it might do good things for his confidence. Into the chicane they go once again, in, out, and in again, because there's a third corner there to the right. It inexplicably still counts as one corner on the track map I got up from Wikipedia, but we can all see that it's clearly 3 corners, and that means that the corner we've just come out of maybe officially turned 13. On our track map at least it's turned 15, and I think that's how it should be. 9 laps to go in this race now. 10 seconds is the advantage that Jacob Reed has. 20 seconds, sorry, goodness me. He's got this in the bag, providing everything goes okay from here on out for Jacob Reed. And we continue to watch the race slightly further down the order.
Paul O'Regan here would love the pass on Michel Rudeau if he possibly can, and he's really searching for it now. He's up to 305 kilometers an hour into the braking zone. I think that's the fastest I've seen anybody down there heading into Dry Sack Corner, Caitlin.
Yeah, well, he's using all of the deployment that he can. He's got the DRS and the slipstream, and as a result, he'll be going faster than a car that's just running on its own. But that is pretty darn quick, even for a, well, it's pretty darn quick even for a racing car. These cars are quite exceptional, and even at a slow circuit like this, they can still build up some real speed. Thomas Beek still in the pit lane. He was serving a penalty a lap ago and having an issue there.
So that'll be the end of Thomas Beek as he retires the car and says, that's my day done. He'll be classified down in 16th position. And still, Michel Rudeau in the number 18 car, last driver in on iRacing. Of course, it's split twice here today. It's a 5,000 strength of field up at the top with the 35 drivers that just made it split out there overall. So there's certainly work to be done for some drivers to get themselves up to a standard. It's very tough when you need at least 3,500 iRating to jump into these big races and get it sorted. O'Regan closing. Wide goes Rudeau, who overcooked it, and Paul O'Regan's got a chance now. He'll have to go on the outside, try and get this move done, but Rudeau commands the circuit and holds.
Almost inverted liveries for these two cars. Blue at the front, white at the back. White at the front, blue at the back. Slightly different shades, of course, but yeah, it's a good hold from Rudeau after an unfortunate mistake running wide. These two both a lap down in this race, but still fighting over a strong position, so that won't matter that much to them. And they can ignore the driver hot on their heels, because that is Kent Nielsen, who's another lap down even from this bunch as well. So not really in contention. All he can do is kind of temporarily spoil their fun. And here's a move now, a little bit late, and O'Regan not able to get Rudeau there. I think he left it just a little too late, and it was quite a close one though.
Look at Gronk, he's only one corner back of them now, and he's really chasing them down. He took a good 6/10 of a second, if not a second, out of that group. It's there just in front, and the key to that move at Expo 92 was that there was no battery deployment from Paul O'Regan, and he still closed it up. The red light, the rain light on the back of his Mercedes W13 e-Performance was flashing, which was indicating that, and you'll see it around this circuit quite a bit, that they're trying to harvest the kinetic energy of the battery and they're not deploying at 100% full pace. It's a very technical car to try and drive.
It is a technical car. You've got a lot of different things to think about at a very high speed. It's one of the reasons that I've personally never been particularly good at high-powered single-seaters, but these drivers are effectively doing a juggling act out there and still putting on a real show with the battling that they're achieving even in these machines. We're seeing an undercut here from Paul O'Regan, a switchback maneuver as he gets a better run onto the straight, goes to the right-hand side of Michel Rudeau, and this time he'll get it done up into turn one.
Right underneath that massive space station-like structure over the top of the circuit. You can get married in there, actually, believe it or not. So if you're ever wanting a wedding, why not have a Jerez wedding? But look at this guy. That's the guy that you got to look at, because he sees just in front, I've got a top 10 on the horizon if I can just chase it down. 6 laps to go, 1 sim speed point. I'll tell you what, it would be one great consolation prize for Gronk to go with. And in front, wide as you like, Michel Rudeau goes, who was trying to find a way back.
And Gronkowski flings it to the inside of Kent Nielsen and goes through. Nielsen does well to see him coming. It's heads up driving there from the driver 2 laps down. On board now with Jordan Gronkowski, the early championship leader who dropped back over the midway point in the season. And look how quickly he's caught up to the back of Rudeau though. He was released from Kent Nielsen and was basically immediately setting about Michel Rudeau. and I think he'll probably get him in this race. It's only 5 laps to go, but he's easily got the pace to do so.
He certainly does have the pace, and he'll be looking to try and charge for it. So now he'll look inside line, searching at the opening corner of Expo 92, commands the centre of the track and says, that's mine. So now to 11th goes Jordan Gronkowski. He needs one more for a top 10, and could he steal it away from Paul O'Regan, who has been working so hard for that 10th place? And this has been the culmination of Jordan Gronkowski's race, the battle of the two stoppers out there. And can he catch and pass Paul O'Regan between now and the end of this one? I reckon he can.
Yeah, I think he can too, especially with the pace that he's showing. We're once again on board for Jordan Gronkowski behind the Halo device and his steering wheel, giving him all sorts of different information, which ironically he'll also be getting from his heads-up display. And through the right-hander he goes, and a big twitch, but saves it, keeps it on the road. It's funny, we take these twitches for granted as something that happens lap in and lap out, and it kind of does. But each one of them is a potential accident saved, and I tell you what, he was a little bit rugged there through the chicane, didn't quite get it hooked up, and I think he'd have lost a few tenths of a second in that.
Yeah, he was very aggressive up over the anti-cut curb, which is on the inside, which wouldn't have done his car too much good, I would have thought. An 18.7 chasing. Paul O'Regan, given some free air, just did an 18.1. So it's not good enough at the moment here from Jordan Gronkowski. Paul O'Regan has got an element of pace about him. Looking at the lap times that were done before that, it was pretty much a case of being in the 17s from Jordan Gronkowski. Paul O'Regan is stepping up to the plate right now to try and keep him back.
So Paul O'Regan needs to respond. Gronkowski clearly has the pace here, and we know that he is a good driver. He's not quite got the performance that he had earlier on this season, but the fact that he has that potential in the first place shows that he is a force to be reckoned with. And with just 4 laps to go, he'll be using every bit of that knowledge. He'll probably I mentioned earlier that there's a chance that something's just come up in his life that means he can practice less as he goes over the curb. That's a big mistake from Gronkowski, and that will give O'Regan the breathing space that he needs. What I was going to say is that he's probably up to speed now, in that he'll have used the first part of the race to get that practice in, but unfortunately makes a little bit of a mistake there, does Gronkowski, and that will impede his chances.
Overdriving it, that's all you can say, but someone who's definitely not overdriving it out there in the race lead, absolutely dominant right now, is Jacob Reed, who realises he is 2 1/3 laps away here, Caitlin, from confirming a second World Tour title.
And he would very, very much deserve it as well. We knew quite a long time ago, actually, that Jacob Reed was going to win it. It's not our job to get all pessimistic about it and say, well, the championship's over when it looks to be, but let's face it, Jacob Reed had this wrapped up a long, long time ago, and he quite simply has been the best. I haven't been keeping a tally of how many times I would have given him the Driver of the Day award this season, but it's more times than not. And I really think that if there's a Driver of the Season, then Jacob Reed is that man.
Yeah, he has been, simply put, dominant in so many races, and it was a case at Long Beach, really, Caitlin, which pretty much bucked the trend. Yes, he finished second, but he finished second by a lap to Jordan Gronkowski. He said, well, using the same set twice in a row is going to give me some food for thought. I've got to think about what I do from this point onwards, and from that point onwards, he just doesn't know what the word lose means.
Long Beach was a bit of a wild race in general. I don't think that one really sums up anyone's ability. But yeah, Jacob Reed since then, it's been like flicking a switch. He was already competitive. He was already one of the best drivers. But Jacob Reed isn't satisfied with just winning. He wants to absolutely dominate, and he wants to win as many races as he can, and as many races in a row as he can. There's Barney giving him the white flag, and he will need no further invitation when he sees the checkered flag to celebrate what will be a very, very well-deserved victory.
Well, for Jacob Reed, he has taken some of the best drivers in the world here. Lenny Papinta, Emil Lundell, the up-and-coming star, Jordan Gronkowski, his main challenger, and the nearly man of this series, Eduardo Rodis, and he has taken them all to task here at Jerez. This is a difficult circuit, it needs skill. Speaking of which, that's Jordan Gronkowski off the road then, again struggling there, and that'll be right in front of the likes of Eduardo Rodis that he's got to try and navigate with, and Michel Rudeau might still have hopes of 11th place just yet. So there is still something to fight for in the final stages, and of course you've got Volta Lux who's sitting there back pretty, hoping there wasn't going to be any dramas. No move made ultimately between those two. Rudeau couldn't find that way through, but we have to look to Jacob Reed because sometimes numbers are unlucky. This will be race win number 13 this season. He is one corner away. He has blown the competition apart at the moment he had to stand and deliver. Jacob Reed makes it a World Tour title. Number 2, the Worcesterman is a winner again.
Yeah, easily the best, simply the best, as the great Tina Turner would say. And he wins it by about 20 seconds as well, which shows just how incredible he was today. Literally no mistakes, maybe a couple of invalidated laps, but let's face it, everyone does that. There's Lenny Papinta taking second place, a good race from him as well. He's done he's been very competitive and has beaten Emil Lundell in wheel-to-wheel combat. Eduardo Rodis will get 4th position, just in front of the lapped Jordan Gronkowski. But another solid drive from Rodis, another slightly frustrating one not to be on the podium. But yeah, like I was going to say, congratulations, Jacob Reed.
It's a championship which he'll look at and say it's going to give him a huge smile at the way that he's conducted it. He has had himself 13 race victories, 4 second places, a 4th place finish at Sebring, a non-start at the Nürburgring due to PC issues, and then that DNF at Aragon has been the only real blemish on a card which most drivers can only dream of. With the way that he's been driving, he has set a standard here in the iRacing Grand Prix World Tour, which can only be matched by the very best that the world has to offer, and his winning margin of 21.5 seconds over a driver like Lenny Papinta is nothing to shake a stick at. Lenny is a fantastic sim racer from France and someone who can, on his day, and did the last time that he raced here, find victory at the end. Emil Lundell will be the last driver on the podium as he continues his rapid charge up through. He hasn't finished off the podium yet this season on races that he started, with Eduardo Rodis in 4th and Volta Lux finishing in 5th. Rodis continuing to boost his hopes of holding on to that 3rd place in the championship. Florian Kamayat will get a very respectable 6th place ahead of George van Rensburg and Edward Apariari in 8th place, with Renato Augusto, the first of the drivers, a lap down, in 9th, and Paul O'Regan siphoning that 1 championship point, which means he guarantees to hold on to that position of 10th in the championship heading to Interlagos in a few weeks' time. You then got Jordan Gronkowski, who does not score points here and will really feel like he's out of sorts, and he needs to go soul-searching over the winter to find that drive and determination to get that back to Jacob Reed, as he will have to cede the title on this occasion. Michel Rudeau and Jason Green would be 12th and 13th. 2 laps down would be both Anthony Catt and Kent Nielsen, who had days to forget, and then the retirees being Thomas Wieck, Alan Brutteau, who had 2 drive-through penalties here today in a very instant-filled race that we had here over the course of this one, and then Victor Awad, who was out very, very early here in this one. So there is still certainly a lot to deal with, and we will be back in 1 week's time for more sim racing action, and arguably it is the greatest battling circuit that the world has ever produced here, Caitlin. Should arguably be the season finale for time in memoriam. Interlagos just brings amazing racing.
Absolutely, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Out of all the tracks still to come on the calendar, Interlagos is the most prestigious and, in my opinion, the best. And you won't want to miss it. I certainly won't. I will see you there.
Well, that's going to be amazing, and you can only catch it with us here at SimSpeed TV. If you haven't had the chance to already, on whatever platform that it is that you go and watch your sim racing on, be it Twitch, Kick, be it on YouTube, be it you're finding us on Facebook, this is always a great series to watch, and you got to keep that in mind. There are still 4 rounds left of the championship, and there are still places to play for in the context, the long and the short, and all these drivers know that victory is still going to be something they want to hold on to as strongly as possible at a circuit which has produced drama of the highest caliber in this motoring world. With these motoring machines before, there was absolutely none of that here for the title for that man doing donuts on screen. It's a second world title for one Mr. Jacob Reed, who puts Worcester on the map and says that he is the best in the world. Catch him if you can, Lenny. Catch him if you can, Emil. Catch him if you can, Gronk. We will see you in 7 days, where streaks continue. Will it be 4 straight and a 12th win in 13 as it goes through for Jacob Reed when we see you at Interlagos?